All right, so we need to talk a little bit more about the ball drop lab. So the question we're doing, or question we're asking for this ball drop lab is which ball will bounce the highest? It's a pretty general question, but we need to do a hypothesis. So for this, it's an if-then statement, well, with a because. So if I drop a ball from 1 meter or 40 inches, depending on what device or measuring device you have, then I think this kind of ball will bounce the highest. So this is where you pick the ball. You have all these different options down here, whatever you happen to have at home, and then you would put that up there, whatever one you think is going to bounce the highest. And you need to explain why. So if you picked a bouncy ball, well, I think the bouncy ball will bounce the highest because it bounces really high, or it has bounce in the name. So that's your example. We have what we're going to test it as, like our lab setup, and then here's our data. So if I drop the tennis ball, I would drop it 1, 2, 3, 4 different times and record the heights every single time from the bottom of the bounce. And then I would do baseball, or a golf ball, or a bouncy ball, and a basketball, or a volleyball. So then we would have all of our data over here. So we would have all our data down here somewhere. Cool. So then, should I put this like this so I can write on it? The next thing we need to do is analyze. And so we've done our question up top, we've done our hypothesis, we've done our test, we've got our data, and we need to analyze. So analyzing our data, we can kind of see if our hypothesis is correct. So my hypothesis is, let's say it was correct. And the bouncy ball bounced the highest. Perfect. That's great. If it wasn't the highest, though, that would be a problem. So then it would be incorrect, and then you would say which one did bounce the highest. So let's say you picked the bouncy ball, but a golf ball bounced higher. So you would say my hypothesis is incorrect, and the golf ball actually bounced to the highest. Okay, now I would like you guys to identify your variables. So real quick. We did this the other day. This is our variable notes. So we have our independent, dependent, and control variables. We're going to identify these for our experiment over here. So let's write down independent, dependent, and control. So our independent variable is the one that we change on purpose. And that actually ended up being the kind of ball that we're dropping. Our dependent variable is what we're measuring. And in this case, it's the bounce height. And then our control variables, there's quite a few of them, but we're only going to pick out a few. So the floor has to stay the same. The drop height has to stay the same. Obviously, gravity has to stay the same. The drop force, you're not putting any force on it, so the drop force has to equal 0. So those are some things that have to stay the same. And you're going to need to be able to identify these in other experiments throughout the next week or two. So being able to understand these things is going to be very important. So remember, the independent is what we're changing, the dependent is what we're measuring, and the control variables are the things that don't change at all. So that's it for this lab, and we'll move on to the next one.